Hi, this month is LGBT plus History Month, and in line with that, I wanted to go through and research the ace community and the history of the word asexual. So what I'm going to do today is basically draw a timeline from the first mention of asexuality to recent times to see how the community has progressed. The first mention I could find of asexuality was in 1869, when Carl Maria Kerbeny coined the terms heterosexual and homosexual. Now, he also coined the term monosexual. Now, this wasn't precisely asexual. The definition was that it was people who only masturbated. They didn't want sex with other people. Obviously, some ace people masturbate, some ace people don't. So it's not perfect, but he at least acknowledges the existence of people who don't want sex with others. Moving on, in 1896, German sexologist Magnus Hirschfeld wrote the pamphlet Sappho and Socrates, in which he mentions anesthesia sexuals, or those without sexual desire. It really blows my mind that there have been mentions of asexuality, even not the name specifically, going back to the late 19th century. Obviously, ace people have existed forever throughout all history, but for it to be mentioned at the same time that heterosexual and homosexuality is proof that it's not just a new thing. Fast forwarding about 50 years to 1948, we get the Kinsey scale, which is often mentioned as the first information about asexuality. So Kinsey made this scale which went from heterosexuality to homosexuality, with bisexuality in the middle. But he also created a separate category called the X category. And these were people who didn't feel sexual desire. In 1948, he published Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, in which he concluded that 1.5% of males identify as asexual, or at least are in this X category. Following on, 5 years later, he published Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, in which 19% of the females asked identified as asexual. They didn't have sexual desire as before. It's interesting that there's this really big disparity between the percentage of males and females, and it's something that you see in the ace community today, although not to that extent. Now, the first mention of the word asexual and asexuality, specifically using that actual word, might surprise you. It definitely surprised me. In 1969, Anton LaVey published a book about Satanism. Yes, Satanism. The worship of Satan. In which he said, Satanism condones any type of sexual activity which properly satisfies your individual desires, be it heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, or even asexual. So, Satanism isn't all bad? I don't know if that's the conclusion you should make from this, but at least they had progressive ideas about sexuality. In 1977, Mira Johnson wrote an academic paper about asexuality, which is really significant, and I think it's one of the first academic papers about asexuality that exists. 2 years later, Michael D. Storms reimagined the Kinsey scale as a 2D map, where you had heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, and asexuality. And it's something that I've seen still used today to some extent. Of course, it isn't as simple as that, but you can kind of get an idea of where you fit on this in this two-dimensional space. I actually did a quiz once where it plotted me on this, and I got into the gay quadrant as opposed to the ace one, and I was disappointed. Another familiar event is a UK census that happened in 1994, and that concluded that 1% of the British population identifies as asexual. This is a number that is often quoted when talking about asexuality, and this is where it comes from. In 1997, Zoe O'Reilly published the article My Life as an Amoeba in Starnet Dispatch's Webzine. I do not know what Webzine is. It's probably before my time, from the sounds of it. But basically, this is one of the first articles talking about someone's experience living as asexual. Obviously, amoeba is a common, I guess, joke in the ace community. It's something about reproducing asexually like an amoeba would. Just 4 years later, in 2001, Avon was founded. If you don't know Avon is the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, and they are probably the biggest online community of asexuals, and they also do a lot of visibility work, including organising conferences and that sort of thing. Avon was founded by David J, who I don't think I've actually mentioned on this channel before, but he is one of the biggest figures in ace activism. In 2002, New York passed the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act, which included asexuality. Then in 2004, Anthony F. Bogart published a paper talking about the results of the census that happened in '94, specifically talking about and studying asexuality. Following this, New Scientist dedicated an issue in response to that paper. In 2005, a book on asexuality, La Mort sans le faire, was released, and from what I can tell, the author Geraldine Levy-Rich-Jones was a massive part of the ace community at that time, and ace activism and ace visibility. In that same year, the ace ring was invented, come about. It became an idea in the Avon forums. I think I've talked about this before, but basically someone wanted a symbol for asexuality, and it was decided upon that it would be the black ring on the middle finger of the right hand, like this. And in 2010, which was just 10 years ago, the ace flag was designed and made and decided upon. Obviously, this flag is a huge part of the community now, and it is a widespread symbol of asexuality. In the same year, Sarah Beth Brooks founded the Asexual Awareness Week, and these types of awareness events are really important for bringing to light minority orientations, or to bring a conversation about something which isn't normally spoken about into the limelight. In 2013, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, explicitly stated that if someone doesn't want sex because they identify as asexual, that is not a mental disorder. And finally, just last year in 2019, Yasmin Benoit helped set up an asexual bar at Pride London that was funded and organised by Budweiser. So putting it into perspective like this, seeing all the history and seeing where we are now, where we have news articles talking about it and activists going out and talking about it, being included in LGBT plus spaces to an extent, and having these events geared around the ace community, the arrow community, and having all these divisions and orientations so more people can feel like they belong. You can see how far we've come in such a short time, and how that growth is just accelerating as we get forward. And of course, there's still a long way to go, and we're essentially living in the history I'm talking about right now. It's a really exciting time to be alive, because we can contribute to that, and we can make asexuality more understood and widespread. So hopefully in another 10 years, another 20 years, there'll be so many more things that will have happened for ace people in the ace community. So yeah, it was really exciting to research this and see all the things that I didn't know about. And I know this was quite a brief overview of what they were, and I wish I could have gone into more depth, but I didn't want to sit here talking for half an hour. Maybe if there is a video you want, do tell me and I will get about doing it, but that would take a lot longer than I have to do the videos at the moment. If you've got any other comments about it, do leave them below. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every other Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time. And my nose is bloody stuffed, and it's horrible, and it's hard to speak, and I'm running out of breath just doing this. Zoe O'Reilly published the article My Life as Sorry, I've got a blocked nose, and it's really hard to talk and pronounce everything correctly when you have a blocked nose.